Wow. What do you think of that, huh? Let's give them a hand. Hello, Guild members. I'm Robert Downey Jr., a semi-retired genre film actor, and I am delighted to be here with the filmmakers, stars, and writers of the soon-to-be-released Apple TV Plus film, Cherry. Thank you, one and all, for that awesome viewing experience. And you know, we were all in the waiting room before we started. We're all in a bunch of different places, and so we didn't really know. We didn't get to coordinate our outfits, but we'll talk about that some other time.
I think we did.
I love this movie. I know certain of you very well. I am a fan now of some of you immediately, and I just want to kick this off with kind of like, how did this come to be? I will pose it to the Russos, and then perhaps talk to writers and eventually stars.
It started way back with in 1944 with Captain America #1.
We a book agent we know slipped us this book before its release, and he said, "I think you're going to love this." It was set in Cleveland, and I know you guys are big Cleveland guys. And Anthony and I read it without knowing what to expect from it. We knew it was about the opioid crisis, but we did not expect the level of authenticity and truth that we found in the voice in the book. And it's very clear that Nico Walker, the author of the book, had gone through a very complicated life experience, or collection of life experiences. And he translated, his emotional truth into this book. And it was so profound because this is very personal to us. Cleveland and the industrial Midwest, in a lot of ways, is ground zero for the opioid crisis. There is an existential blight that has gripped that part of the country for the last few decades, and a creeping sense of trauma that has infiltrated it. And we know a lot of people, a lot of family members who are struggling with addiction, and family members who have died from addiction. So this was a very personal choice for us to make this movie and to initiate a conversation about what is becoming an almost invisible problem amidst this COVID pandemic. But I believe that we are in, and Robert, maybe you know better than me, but I think we're in our deadliest year of the opioid crisis.
It literally is undeniable. And so, Anthony, as far as the casting, what was your process on making decisions? And with Sierra, your new biggest fan, by the way, ma'am, and of course the indubitably talented Mr. Holland.
Our first experience was with the novel, and for all the reasons Joe was just describing, the novel was very exciting to us. Most specifically, too, it felt very current. We don't have direct war experience ourselves or military experience, but we certainly studied it throughout our lives through literature and film. Same thing with the drug experience. And this felt like a very fresh, original version of that experience that was very much of today, very much about the post 9/11 generation. And the novel is very difficult. It's challenging. It's a dark, complicated story. And Joe and I were immediately drawn to it for the reasons I just described and Joe was describing. But it was hard for us to understand how we can make a movie, how we could tell a story that's so complicated and difficult in a way that people are going to want to watch it as a film. And immediately, while we were struggling with that, Tom popped in our heads as the lead character. And when he did, that sort of broke the whole thing open for us. All of a sudden, it felt like there was a road to bringing a filmed version of this story to audiences for us, because Tom is so uniquely capable of creating empathy and interest and bringing positive feelings, into a very complicated situation and to a character who makes very difficult choices. As far as Sierra went, the movie is very specifically from Cherry's point of view. And so there was a huge challenge with the character of Emily in the sense that she's an incredibly important character to the story, but because the movie is limited perspective on her. And that was really critical to sort of making the movie everything that it could be.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a. Look, I've told you guys I'm crazy about this movie. I've in the nicest snotty uncle way possible. I've let Tom know that I think this is really the role of his lifetime thus far. And I want to talk to Angela and Jessica about some of this stuff in a minute, because, you know, it's like, I think like Mario Puzo writes The Godfather and you go, wow, that'd be a great movie one day. I see Cherry and I go, wow, I should read that book. This is the world we live in, but it's interesting also because I know it felt to me like, having done all these Marvel films together and other stuff we were doing during the while, that you really wanted to go do something that was meaningful to you, and you chose the right guy to be your quarterback for this. But I really see this as a two-hander. So before I spend most of the rest of the interview with your co-star Tom, I just want to say it's such a departure for you, brother. You know, and I mean, I know what it was, but what was your process being drawn to it, and how daunting was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was really daunting. It was really daunting. The first time I read through the script, I was firstly just blown away by the opportunity that the brothers had handed me, and the kind of responsibility that was put on my shoulders to do justice to this man's story. But also, as Joe was saying earlier today, we're telling the story of millions of people. This is happening to people all around the world. So I understood the responsibility of trying to do my best and to push myself to the limit. And as far as the process goes, it was, you know, physically trying to change, which was losing weight and prepping and figuring out with my makeup artist the differences in how we would, you know, distinguish the difference between each version of Cherry. Sierra and I sat down and we interviewed veterans and people who were suffering from substance abuse, and it was so enlightening, and I learned so much about a topic I knew very little about. And from talking to these people and learning their stories and being so touched that they were able to share such kind of personal and quite frankly horrible experiences that they had been through, I felt a level of responsibility to portray them and portray their life experiences in the most truthful and authentic way possible. So for me, it was all about just giving it everything I had and trying my best. And I wasn't afraid to dive in head first, because I obviously had Joe and Anthony in my corner to kind of pick up the pieces and put me back together if I needed it. So I had the best possible team for me to do the best possible work I think I could have done. And then obviously to have Sierra as my partner in crime every day was the biggest gift of this process, because without her and without our relationship in this film, on screen and off screen, I don't think it would have been possible for me to kind of go to the places that I needed to go to. So the fact that we kind of had each other's backs and we were willing to be vulnerable with each other, and we were willing to kind of, you know, go through this crazy process together was a real treat. And so, Sierra, I'm so grateful. So thank you.
I'm so grateful to you as well.
It spans 15 years. And again, when I was watching it, from the scene where you two first meet, and there's this moment, and you're seeing someone else, and you're saying that you're not available, and there's this moment of recognition that Sierra really held it. I mean, she really carried the reason why you thought is this love, and then of course it's this pas de deux, this dance of two, this Sid and Nancy-esque descent into dependency and interdependency and anguish and all this stuff. And I really need to know more about you, Sierra. How did you find the depths to be able to plumb with Mr. Holland as you went along this just insane journey?
Well, much like Tom, I felt a similar sense of responsibility in doing this journey justice, especially when it comes to the battle of addiction. That's something that's so personal to each and every individual who's going through it. And I didn't take that lightly. So it's something that I spoke to the brothers about in depth, and I was able to come in contact with a rehab facility in Cleveland who were kind enough to open up their doors for me. And just getting the chance to speak to the outpatients there and many of the employees who had gone through the program themselves, especially one nurse in particular who had a startlingly similar journey to Emily's. I was able to find all of these details that made Emily feel like a three-dimensional person. You know, like we were talking about earlier, you very much so see her through the eyes of Cherry. She is his anchor, and their love story is the needle that threads all of the chapters of this film together. But in first reading the script, what I noticed about her that felt individual of Cherry and fully her own was something that I learned growing up in the Midwest myself in Cincinnati, Ohio, not far from Cleveland, is that in the Midwest, we tend to define success through family and through career. And if you have those two things, then everything else is going to fall into place for you. You don't have to take care of yourself, worry about, you know, mental or emotional health. But I think what we see throughout her journey is what can happen when you allow yourself to get lost in another person for far too long. And that's something that I've seen myself, unfortunately, a few times in loved ones and friends back home. And I think knowing and understanding that allowed me to turn her into a fully realized character. I hope, anyway.
Well, that you did. And trust me, I was absolutely blown away. And it's funny too, and I credit Jessica and Angela with this, and I'm sure also Joe and Anthony about, you know, she is no victim. She is often the prime mover in the trouble that's going on. She's egging them on. Why don't you go rob another bank? I mean, that's when it gets juicy. And that's when I go, first of all, how are these two ever going to redeem themselves? And somehow or other, it happened in a way that was credible, but also there was a lot of accountability and a lot of loss there. So I want to hand it over to Jessica and then Angela, or feel free to just kind of speak with each other. It's inspired by the book, but I've started reading the book now, like I said, and it's like reading the Basketball Diaries and then seeing the movie. I mean, it's very much been tailored and augmented. Can you talk about what was important for both of you as if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage or the screen, to convey in the screenplay?
Well, when the family, I'll just call them the family, when they sent me the book, I was just, you know, you start reading and it's this poetic, raw voice, and it spans all these years. And you feel this opportunity to write about these huge social themes that are touching everybody's lives right now. And I think, Angela, the first thing was we went to Cleveland to get this sense of place and the sense of this broken city. And we sort of walked the walk of the book. But then very quickly, we decided we really needed this frame, like something to hold the book together. And that became this love story. And like you pointed out, you know, towards the end, when she becomes really a participant in their mutual codependent demise, that is something that we, you know, had to be architecture. But Angela, I'm going to hand it over to you. But that was really, I think, our task, was like figuring out how to retain the poetry and the rawness and the unique voice of this incredible writer, and then give it this something to hold it together.